Hi everyone, welcome to Bodhran for Bagpipers. The Irish bodhrán is a very unique instrument in that it is simultaneously one of the oldest and newest instruments in Irish traditional music and trad music more broadly. It is an ancient drum, but it is also a relatively recent addition to traditional music. Within Ireland, there are regional pronunciation differences ranging from bodhrán to bowrán depending on where you're from. The meaning of its name is interesting and kind of suggests that it was named by an annoyed band member. It comes from the Irish word for a hollow sound and is also related to the English word bother. Prior to the 1960s, the bodhrán was often a mummer's drum that would double as a grain sieve when it wasn't in use as an instrument. There are a few theories about the bodhrán's early origins. The first is that it traveled with the Celts across Europe and into Ireland. Another theory is that it came from the Middle East and developed out of similar frame drums called the tar and duff. A third theory is that it developed out of an early tambourine. Some early bodhráns actually had coin zills or jingles along the rim. To understand the bodhrán, it can be really helpful to understand the context that it emerged into. So Irish music has three main branches. You have the harping tradition, the singing tradition, and the dance music tradition, of which the session is a big part. The bodhrán really fits into this latter category. The dance music of Ireland was originally solo and unaccompanied. A single fiddler or piper would play for house parties and crossroads dances. There's the great warning for dancers, around the house sit mind the dresser. In this initial context, rhythm for the dancers was in the melody of the tune. Without percussion, the melodies came to embody this rhythmic quality. This is really important as far as the role of bodhrán in trad music. In 1935, music in Ireland shifted with the Public Dance Halls Act, which banned these home gatherings and pushed the music into approved dance halls. Céilí bands developed out of the need for more volume, bringing in drum kits and marching rhythms. But some would argue that these new bands lost a lot of the nuance of that solo playing. In the 1960s, as a response to the Céilí band, Seán Rita formed Kilturry Coolan, which would later become the Chieftains. In doing this, he sought to revive and highlight the subtlety, complexity, and sophistication of solo playing in an ensemble context through a paradigm shift. He elevated Irish music into a classical concert hall with everyone dressed very formally. He arranged the music, trading phrases in a jazz-inspired way that highlighted individuals, instruments, and textures. This brought a quality of solo playing back into the ensemble context. And Seán Rita put himself center stage on harpsichord and bodhrán. Seán Rita was instrumental in reviving Irish music in the 60s, and as a drummer himself, he positioned the bodhrán as a central instrument in this revival. O'Rita's bodhrán was low, droning, bassy, with a lot of depth and contrasting rim clicks. This style was characteristic of a lot of early bodhrán playing during that time. Drums from this period were built to facilitate that style. These were often larger, shallower framed drums, giving them that nice droning rumble. In the 1970s, Seamus O'Kane in Northern Ireland started experimenting with the bodhrán, beginning its evolution into more contemporary forms and a new sound and style. O'Kane's innovations included an internal tuning ring to combat the Donegal damp, a thin lambeg skin borrowed from the marching drums that provided deeper yet crisper tones, a smaller diameter frame, and a deeper frame. This last change enabled a much greater range of tones, and you start to see the bodhrán becoming almost melodic in its use of pitch. John Joe Kelly from Fluke and Eamon Murray from Bioga are excellent examples of this new style. The traditional bodhrán, revived by Seán Rita, is larger, with a thin frame and a thicker head, often with a crossbar for standing or marching. And the playing style is one marked by a rumbling, drone-like quality and contrasting clicks on the rim. The more contemporary bodhrán is smaller, deeper, tunable, and the playing style is more melodic and pitch-oriented, emphasizing a range of tones. If you're thinking in terms of drum set comparisons, the traditional bodhrán is a marching bass drum and snare, and the contemporary bodhrán is like a giant rack of toms. So the first key to playing the bodhrán is how to hold it. So you would place it on your left leg and then roll it back into your armpit, pinning it between your forearm and your side, sort of your ribs in there. So you'd want to pin it like right there. So you can see it on this camera over here. Then you sort of roll that into your armpit a little bit, place it on your side, and you should have a pretty good grip. It does wobble a little bit. Some of the older drums with crossbars are really good for stabilizing, especially as you're learning. But as you progress, these sort of newer contemporary models shouldn't pose too much of a problem. So you pin it between your forearm and your ribs. And if it's wobbling too much, you can sort of put your hand up here. And later we'll get into some playing styles where you're actually bracing the heel of your hand against the skin, and that adds some more stability. But for now, it will kind of deaden the sound, so you can sort of put your hand up here if you like. So now that we know how to hold the bodhrán, the next step is how do you play it? A great place to start is with the Roscommon style, which is just playing with your hand, so kind of forgoing the stick for now, and we'll bring that in as we gain confidence. The Roscommon style is rooted in the same motions that you would use for playing with the stick. The key to playing the bodhrán is in this forearm motion, this continuous rotation. As we sort of move our hand so that our palm is facing down, that's the downstroke. And as we kind of bring it up so that our thumb is pointing up, that's the upstroke. Down, up, down, up, down, up. And that continuous motion really carries through every rhythm on the bodhrán, every style. So that's the key. Once you get that, you can play the bodhrán. So the Roscommon style is a tipperless or a stickless playing style. It's great for accompanying vocals, whether you're singing yourself or you're accompanying another player. This is a great soft style, and it eliminates one of the elements of confusion, which is the stick or the tipper. So the Roscommon style, we've got that rotation, down, up, and you want to loosen up your hand. The downstroke is you're just kind of throwing your hand down at the floor, up, down, up. And the upstroke, you're kind of throwing your hand upward towards the ceiling. Throw it down, throw it up, throw it down, throw it up. You've still got that rotation there of the forearm, keeping everything going. So let's try that on the drum. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Let's try to speed that up a little bit. Playing a reel. This is great. Down, up, 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 down, up. And that's your basic reel right there. Down, up, down, up. A variation of the Roscommon style is called the Clare style, and it would just be using one finger, so that's a little bit softer. Down, up. Go back to the going back to the Roscommon style with all your fingers. You can experiment with using different fingers or different amounts of fingers. You can alternate between a deeper sound using your knuckles or using the flesh of your fingers, or alternating with your nails, which will give it more of a clicky sound. Sort of a scratch, more of a thud. So those are the Roscommon and the Clare styles, which are really useful for getting started. Now, using the tipper is similar to that. So, to play with the tipper, start out by holding it like a pencil. So a lot of these tippers will have a knob in the middle or a couple of little rubber spacers, and those are helpful for setting up an ideal finger position. So it's a good way to kind of to index that. Usually I recommend having it a little bit off center. There are a few different ways of playing with sticks, but right in the middle doesn't often have the best balance. I feel like having it just slightly up of center and then holding it there tends to work the best for me. But if you're more comfortable holding it in the center, or if that's where the bump in your tipper is, then feel free to hold it there as well. To start off playing with the tipper, you want to hold it like a pencil, and then you drop the point of the pencil in towards yourself. And then if we go back to the forearm rotation, that is the cornerstone of the Bodhran technique, just rotate. When your palm is facing the floor, that's the downstroke. When your thumb or your palm is closer to the ceiling, that's the upstroke. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay. Almost ready to put this on the Bodhran. So when we start playing with the tipper on the head, it can be a little bit tricky when you start because of the bounce and because of the scrape. If you're playing too tightly, the tipper will tend to scrape on the drum because you're holding it too tightly. To get the proper bounce of the tipper against the head as we're arcing it across the skin, you want to have a little bit of looseness. So I'm moving it. It's fairly firm, but it also kind of bounces. And a key to that, to test the bounce, is sort of pinch it between your thumb and your forefinger, and then try to bounce it on your middle finger. Do you see that? If you're able to sort of bounce it on that middle finger, so it's tight between these two fingers, but loose enough to bounce. So that's the key. You want to get that bounce, otherwise you're going to be scraping. Want a little bit of that bounce. So let's all try that. The rotation of the forearm transferred to the skin. Down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. That sounds great. Awesome. So that is basically every rhythm on the Bodhran comes back to this down, up, down, up. So in Irish and Scottish traditional music, there are two main rhythms. There are lots of other rhythms, but there are two really big ones. It's the reel and the jig. So the reel on the Bodhran is just what we've been doing all along. It's the down, up, in these groups of four. 1, 2, 3, 4, down, up, down, up. So that's our basic reel. We can try going a little bit faster. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. You can play with emphasis. So emphasis on the Bodhran, just hit it a little bit harder, is a good way to sort of accent that main beat. So the first place to put emphasis usually is on the first beat of a group of four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll find that you naturally want to emphasize the downstrokes, which is a great place to start. You could emphasize every downstroke. Down, up. variation is really important in keeping things interesting on the bodhrán. So for example, we could emphasize the first two downstrokes, then the third downstroke, and then wait until the end of that group of four. Down, 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 down. Or we could flip that around and go down, 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 down. Most real variations have some manner of that. I think the second example is really good because it gives you this root at the beginning and then it lifts and then it kind of down, 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 lift, down, down, down. And when you're playing the bodhrán, it's helpful to be thinking about the contour of the melody and the tune. Because the bodhrán was kind of a late addition to traditional music, the melodies are so embedded with rhythm that just listening to the melody, you can pull a lot of ideas for your bodhrán playing. And thinking about the melody as you're playing the bodhrán is a great way to add some musicality to your playing. Let's mix it up a little bit and try emphasizing the upstroke. That is one of the trickier elements of the bodhrán. There is a way to get around it, which I will show you later. So let's emphasize the upstroke, starting just with the basic. Down, up, down, up. Let's emphasize the upstroke. Down, up. As you can see, that's pretty tricky, especially if you're new at the bodhrán. It can be tricky even if you're not new. It's a very unnatural emphasis, but it is really important to be able to sort of vary your playing, vary between upstrokes, to vary between upstroke emphasis and downstroke emphasis really is a great way to improve your bodhrán playing. One thing that I think about a lot when I'm playing the bodhrán is to emphasize, it's almost like you're throwing your hand, throwing your tipper at the bodhrán. Where the regular stroke is kind of this just arcing, this graceful arcing where you're just hitting in the middle. To emphasize, kind of adding a little bit more force, moving your arm in addition to the tip is really helpful. For the upstroke, think about like throwing your hand, throwing that tip up will give it a little bit more oomph. So let's try a real rhythm that mixes together these upstroke emphases and downstroke emphases. So you got down, just So that's a common rhythm on the bodhrán. You emphasize the first down, 2, 3, up, and then at the end of that group of 4, you emphasize the upstroke, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just play that first bit. Down. Okay, now that we've got that bit, The second group of 4 has the emphasis on 1, 2, 3, 4. You emphasize the third note. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. Let's just put those together. So we're emphasizing 1, 2, 3, up, down, down, 2, 3, up, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Let's try putting that together. 1, 2, 3, up, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, up, down, down, up, down, down. Awesome. What that also does is you're dividing up the reel 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 into 2 groups of 3 and then a group of 2, which is almost pulling it into this other rhythm. It's adding the syncopation. Because of that upstroke emphasis at the end, you're syncopating the rhythm and giving it this really interesting sort of internal relationship. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. It's starting to pull the reel a little bit towards the jig. The key to a lot of really amazing bodhrán playing is this incorporation of syncopation that kind of gives us these moments of rootedness and then these moments of lift where we feel like, what's happening? So yeah, finding that balance is really important. Now that we have the reel down, let's try playing the jig. The jig is similar in that it's based in the same rotation. The only difference is that the jig is based in groups of 3 instead of groups of 4. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the jig will go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And if you ignore emphasis, you could literally play the same pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If everyone can join along. 2, 3, 4. So we're playing the reel right now. Now let's play the jig. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Reel 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now jig. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. To give it a little more clarity and to fit more with the melody that you might be accompanying, emphasis is the key. So let's try emphasizing the first beat of every group of 3. And you'll find that that adds a little bit of complexity because the second group of 3 starts on the upstroke. So every other 3, your emphasis will be changing. Be 1, 2, 3, up, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, up, 2, 3. So let's try this. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, up. 1, 2, 3, up, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, up. So that's your basic jig rhythm. So it's, apart from the upstroke, the jig is quite reasonable. There are some variations on the jig that you can do, and really the variations often come down to emphasis. I think one of the most important tools or notes or resources for the bodhrán is silence. Like with bagpipes, silence is this like elusive, coveted thing, or audience members, for audience members of the bagpipes, silence is this like coveted thing, perhaps. With the bodhrán, silence is really useful, and especially silence as a drum stroke. So we've got our played notes, our sounding notes. Now move your hand back and keep the rotation. These are our silent notes. So a silent note is very important on the bodhrán. Let's go back. So let's try something. Let's play the first jig, the first group of three, as played notes. Let's play the second group of three as silent notes, and then alternate. 1, 2, 3, silent, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, silent, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, silent, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, silent, 2, 3. And that might seem kind of silly and just like an exercise, and it is, but it illustrates that you have this continuous rotation. The key with the silent note is that it keeps the momentum going and it keeps your sense of rhythm. It's basically like acknowledging the rests. And so it's really good for a sense of consistency and momentum in your playing. One of the most common variations for the jig is built around this idea of the silent note. So this main variation for the jig is called the mother of all jig rhythms, and it's sort of built around this idea of the silence as the note. So you have down, down, up. So in that first group of jigs, in that first group of three, you have down, up, down, down, up, down. You have that silent note right in the middle, and it creates this nice kind of syncopation. Down, up, down. Let's all try that together. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. In this case, the silent note is a great way for sort of resetting that downstroke. Otherwise, it would be down, up, da, ba, da, dum, dum, ba, bum, ba, down. So playing that silent note helps to reset your hand. Down, up, down. And the second group of three in that pattern is just up, down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up, up, down, up. So adding those together, you have down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's try to add some speed. As with the jig rhythms before, emphasis is a really important tool in this as well. Emphasis is kind of generated through that silent stroke. It gives the notes before and after it a little bit more weight. But we can also add emphasis just by hitting it a little bit harder, sort of accenting that note. The emphasis in this rhythm is most powerful, I think, in those first two downstrokes. Down, down. If you really hit those, if you hit those first two notes a little bit harder, you can create this really nice effect. And you can alternate that by emphasizing that upstroke on the second group of 3, down, down, up, down, 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 up, down, and sort of alternating between that heavy down, down, and the lighter down, down, up can create this nice kind of oscillation of emphasis. Awesome. So that is the mother of all jig rhythms. Another variation that you can use with this mother of all jig rhythms is the click. And the click is basically most easily used as an upstroke. So start from below the rim and play an upstroke that hits the rim as it comes up. So it's just an upstroke like that. And you're just hitting the rim on your way up. So let's play a downstroke and then the click upstroke. Down, click, down, click, down, click, down, click, down, click, down, click, down, click. The upstroke click is a really useful technique in this mother of all jig rhythms. So it would go down, down. Instead of playing that upstroke, play that upstroke as a click. Down, down, click. Let's simplify it a little bit. Down, down, click. Down, down, up. Down, up, down, up. Down, up, down, up. Down, down, click. Down, click, down, down, click, down, down, click. Now to extend that a little bit, let's fill out that last bit. So that last group of 3 is click, down, up, click, down, up, click, down, up. And it's just click, down, up, click, down, up, click, down, up, click, down, up. So to put those two together with the slightly more difficult second part, down, down, click, down, up, down, down, click, down, up, down, down, click, down, 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 click, down, 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 click, down, 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 click. There's another variation to add a little bit more complexity to that. So for that second group of 3, instead of going click, down, up, you're really just doing click, down, click. So every upstroke becomes a click. Click, down, click, down, click, up, down, up, down, up, click, down, click, down, click. So to put that all together, down, up, down, click, down, click, down, 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 down, click, down, click, down. That can be a really good variation to end a pattern. So let's see. One example of that would be doing the basic one initially. So you would do the simple pattern 1, 2, 3 times, and then you would do the double click on the 4th time. So 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That can be a really good way to sort of break up the monotony. Because traditional music is built around these phrases that are often 4 measures long, 8 measures long, you have these kind of repetitions of 4 and 8. So if you're thinking in terms of Bodhran rhythms, doing things 4 times, or the 4th time adding a variation as like the cap of the pattern, that's a good way to think about variation in Bodhran playing. Doing something 3 times and then the 4th time you change it. Oftentimes in trad music, the 4th measure or the 8th measure will be like the final measure before it repeats or before it goes to the next section. So that can be a great place to add some variation in your Bodhran playing in that last measure to kind of up the ante a little bit. Now, let's return to the reel briefly and bring back some of these ideas that we have about the silent stroke and about the click. So our basic reel rhythm, playing every note down, up, down, up. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Now let's try adding some spaces into that. You can put them in wherever you want, but I find that a good place to put it is in that second upstroke, down, up, down, up, down, up. So a little bit of silence in that first upstroke on beat 2, or on note 2, sorry. Down, up, down. Adding a little variation. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can throw in those silent upstrokes wherever you like. Instead of doing a silent upstroke, you could do a silent downstroke, and that will create some more syncopation. So let's see. One example, down, up, down, up, down, up. Those are some examples of places to throw in silent upstrokes. In that last example, I was doing a silent downstroke and then a silent upstroke, and then alternating between silent down and upstrokes. The click is also possible in the reel as well, but because it's so much easier to do a click on an upstroke, it's really effective on jigs, where sometimes the upstrokes will be on the main beat. Whereas with a reel, the upstrokes are often always on the offbeat. And so the click, bringing those into a reel, will give more of a feeling of syncopation. It's a different effect, but it can sound quite good. So for the tipper, the style that we've been playing, where you sort of hold it near the center and then play it like this, that is called the Kerry style. One of the greatest things about the Kerry style is the ability to play triplets. And so triplets in the Kerry style, you would play a downstroke, you would follow through, and this is the one case where you would play with the top of the stick. With the Bodhrán, often we play just with the point that's facing down. But when we're playing the triplet, we can bring in the top of the stick. So for the triplet, we play a downstroke, down, with that inside point, down, and then we follow through until we hit the top. Down, top, down, top, down, top, down, top, down, top. The triplet can be really messy until you get it up to speed, which makes it especially hard to learn because you want to play it slower to get the motion. But the key to the triplet is the looseness. The key to the triplet is the looseness of your wrist and of your arm. And quickness plus looseness really creates a nice triplet. So, returning to the triplet, we have a downstroke, the top of the stick, and then we finish that up with an upstroke. Down, top, up, 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 down, top, up. And be thinking loose. Up to speed. Up to speed. It's just like this motion. It's just like this flopping. But you want to make sure that it's floppy enough that the top of the stick hits the skin, but also controlled. So it's this balancing, this really tricky balancing of floppy and controlled. Up to speed. I apologize if this is messy sounding. It sometimes takes a little bit of getting into, but down, top, up, down, top, up, down, top, up. So that's the triplet. Another thing to note is that the triplet becomes much easier when it's not played on an open head. If you muffle it from behind, the bounce becomes much more controllable. The bounce of the drum head becomes much more controllable, and the bounce of the stick off of that head becomes more controllable. And so as you kind of rein in these like variables and these little chaotic moments, you can really get a nice, clean triplet. But yeah, just remember looseness is key. So to put the triplet into context, a good place to use it is often in the reel. So we have our pattern down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. With that silent upstroke, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So to incorporate the triplet, we can throw it in the down up. So we have the down up, triplet, 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 triplet, down up, da ba da. So how do we do that? Let's try it very slowly. Down, up, down, tap, up, down, up, down, tap, up, down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet, down. Triplet down, triplet down, triplet down. So the triplet fits into the space of a down-up in your typical reel. Triplet, triplet, dup-a-dup, dup-a-dup. And really, the way to play the triplet is just to sort of do a floppy downstroke. Down, tap, and then up. Down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet, down, up, triplet. Up to speed. So that is the triplet in context. Wherever you have a down up, you can do a down tap quickly in the place of the down, and then the upstroke. So the downstroke and the upstroke are the same, and the tap from the top, down tap, just comes right after that downstroke. Down tap up, down tap up, down tap up. So the triplet fits in anywhere you have a downstroke followed by an upstroke. You just do, instead of down, up, you go down, tap, up, down, tap, up, down, up, down, up, down, tap, up, down, tap, up, down, up. And to really get an effective triplet, just remember to keep everything loose and kind of floppy. The floppiness, what it does is it allows all of the notes to bounce properly, so you don't end up with a scrape, and it really creates this nice flow. A good place to put the triplet in the jig is in the beginning of a group of three. So instead of down, up, down, you would do triplet down. So 1, 2, 3, triplet 3, 1, 2, 3, triplet 3, down, up, down, down, tap, up, down, tap, up, down, boom. So to take that a little bit faster, to get the flow necessary and the bounce necessary for it to sound good, So it takes a little bit of work, and it's kind of a more advanced feature of the tune. But when you're able to get the triplet nice and loose and bouncy and clean, it goes great in the space of the down and the upstroke at the beginning of a jig beat. So wherever you have a down and an upstroke, just throw in a quick tap in between them. Another aspect of the Bodhrán that we haven't quite touched on yet is what do we do with our other hand? There are a few different things that you can do, and really what this hand does is it manipulates the tone. It turns this from a bass drum into a snare drum, into a tom. Different toms, lower toms. So with this back hand, we can completely change the sound of this head. Basically what we're doing is we're turning it into a timpani. We have this little, we're using our hand to change the pitch, much like a timpani would. We're basically subdividing the head so that it resonates at different frequencies, which is a really cool feature of the drum. Initially, it wasn't so much practiced. With these older, more traditional styles of drumming, you just have the big boom, and the variation was in emphasis of this hand. How hard are we hitting it? That creates differences in this tone. And if we really want a completely different sound, we bring in the clicks. But with this sort of change of the drum toward a more melodically capable instrument, we can really bring in a lot of different pitches to create this unique, almost melodic sound, or something more akin to a drum set rather than a marching bass drum and a marching snare. Rather than this like clear split, we have all these tom-toms that give us all these different pitches, which is a really fascinating development in the bodhrán. It kind of brings it back to the melody that kind of started it. So the most basic pitch change, I would say, is switching from having your hand off the drum. I'm just holding it off to the side right here, and having it on the drum. So. So let's try just a basic real rhythm. Down, up, and just change what we do with our left hand, our non-dominant hand, to change the pitch. And again, it can be useful to think in terms of groups of 4 or groups of 2. Thinking in terms of the measure structure of the tunes that we're playing along with. So that is a good way to sort of create these different tones. You can also change things up by playing either directly into your hand. You can see my hand right here. You can play directly into it to create a very clicky sound. Another thing I should mention is that I'm playing with a bundle tipper, and so the clicks are a little bit more clicky than they would be with a traditional tipper, which would just be a stick. But even with those, you'll still hear this quite a nice difference between these different tones, just not as clicky as this is. So to play directly into our hand gives us one tone. Or if you play right above in here, in between your thumb and your index finger, it actually creates this really nice, like, slightly higher tone. You have this like kind of dull thudding click, or more of a tonal click. So let's try just doing every four notes. Let's try alternating between open and between a click, and let's try alternating as well between the click in the palm and the click above your index finger. 1, 2, 3, 4 into the palm. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now above the index finger. 1, 2, 3, 4 into the palm. Now above the index finger. There are many other ways to get tones on the bodhrán. A common way is to use the side of your hand and press that into the drum. That will create more of a tone, especially if you're playing above it or below it. Let's try that. And you can also vary the amount that you're pushing this hand into the drum. The more you push in, the more you're tuning the drum to a higher pitch. So let's try using the side of our hand. Just playing above it, playing below it. Quite the same. Because the hand's higher, it's creating basically a smaller drum up here, subdividing the head. You get a higher pitch. Because there's so much drum below, you're basically creating a second larger drum under here. So that can be a cool effect. Depending on where this hand is, where it's moving, you can create all these different. So just by moving that hand along the back of the drum, you can create all these different pitches. Sometimes, if you have sweaty hands, it can be useful to use talcum powder on that hand so that it moves around a little bit more cleanly, or wearing a smooth glove on that hand can be really helpful to get that motion. One thing that I like to use a lot is just using the heel of my hand and varying the amount of pressure that I put on the drum, so it doesn't require me to move my hand around as much, but I'm still able to get a nice range of pitches. So I have my hand right here, my heel is pushing in, no other part of my hand is touching the drum, just the heel. And just by moving it, I'm not varying the pressure, I'm just varying the position. And by just varying the position of the heel of your hand, you can change the pitch much in the same way as you would with the side of your hand. And it's raising the pitch because it's basically creating the smaller subdivision of the skin. It's like fretting a guitar string. You can also get a similar effect by just pushing in further. So by essentially tightening the drum head. To show a little bit of that in context. So we've got our real rhythm. Open. Adding in the hand. So those are some of the different things you can do. Now, where do we put these in? A good way of thinking about pitch changes on the Bodhrán is to think about what would a drum set do, or where are you used to hearing like the bass drum versus the snare drum, the low notes versus the high notes. Oftentimes it's good to start a passage with a low note. So starting out low and then getting higher and then coming back down. And the tunes often will function in a similar way. They'll start off kind of at this bass line, then they'll get higher, and then they'll get lower, and higher and lower. So you have this like melodic contour that goes up and down, where up is this like lift, and then down is like this kind of this sense of feeling grounded. And so the Bodhrán often functions in a very similar way, and it's good to have this balance. It's often good to start from a place of being grounded, and then kind of lift up, give the sense of sort of lift, and then sort of bringing it back down again. So to sort of bring that back into like practical technique, with the reel, it can often be good to start with a lower pitch for the first 4 beats, or for the first 4 notes, to go to a higher pitch for the next 4 notes, and then to alternate between those. 1, 2, 3, 4, higher. In any way you like. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Higher. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Higher. 2, 3, 4. For those higher pitches, I'm just pushing in the heel of my hand. You could also do just flatten your hand against the back of the drum. That would also give a nice distinction. Right now, we're not going so much for specific tones as this feeling of weight and lift. Down, high, down, high, low, 2, another good thing to do is to be thinking about how do you get from this high pitch back to the sense of feeling more stable. And a good way to do that is to slowly lower the pitch. Once you get to this high place, slowly lower it until you're back to this space, until you're back to the place where you started. So for that second group of 4, we were playing the higher notes. Try moving your hand off the drum or reducing the pressure of the heel of your hand to kind of create the pitch dropping effect. A really easy way to do that is to start with your heel in the middle of the drum and then just to move it backwards off. Move it up and off. So let's add those together. So for the first 4 beats, we're just playing open. The second 4 beats, we're starting with our heel of the hand in the middle and then moving it off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. So that's one way to vary the tonal quality of the drum in line with the melody. To create a greater sense of intensity, you can double up these changes. So instead of changing it every 4 notes, you're changing it every 2 notes. So you're kind of like double time changes. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, every 2, 1. So the first 2 is open, open, open. The second 2, put your hand on the back of the drum in any way that you see fit. So you can do just placing your hand on the back. Or you could have a little bit more tone. You could use the heel of your hand. That creates this really nice kind of pulsing effect that adds a little bit of energy. So let's alternate between switching every 4 and switching every 2. Now every 2. Now every 4. Now every 2. With the jig, alternating between lower tones and higher tones often is very similar to with the reel. So with the jig, every group of 3, think of sort of switching between low and high, low, high, low, high, in terms of tones. Low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low. And this alternation adds some interest. It also gives the sense of starting out in this grounded place, this like heavy bass drum place, getting up into this kind of snare drum atmosphere, and then coming back down again, kind of melodically falling back into that start. So this kind of alternation between being grounded and being lifted. bringing back in the mother of all jigs, the down, down, up, down, down, up with the silent upstroke, and bringing in the tones as well. Awesome. So those are the basic rhythms with some very basic tones. There are lots of options for tones, but oftentimes what's most important is thinking about the contour and the effect of those tones. Are they low tones that root it? Are they higher tones that kind of create this sense of lift? Another aspect of playing the jig that can be very useful is to do a down-up tap. And instead of doing down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So that is the typical jig rhythm. Every beat, every group of three, you alternate and emphasize downstroke and an upstroke. With the down-up tap, every beat is a downstroke. Down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down. And this actually draws really heavily from Celtic guitar players, John Doyle, and Bodhran players. If you watch the strumming patterns of traditional guitar players, you will often be able to find really interesting Bodhran patterns from their playing on guitar. The pick, the use of the pick is very similar to the up-down stroke of the Bodhran. This is basically like a guitar or a banjo. So, for the jig rhythm, the down-up tap. Down, up, tap. So the tap is just kind of a bounce against the skin. Down, up, tap. Down, up, tap. Down, up, tap. Down, up, tap. What the tap allows you to do is go directly into a downstroke. Tap, down, tap, tap, down, tap, down. So the tap is just a quick little bounce. Tap, down, tap, down, tap, down, tap, down. So, using that tap down as a way to get directly back into a downstroke, let's try looping it. Down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap. So the tap down is a great way to get around having to ever do an upstroke on the beat, and ever having to emphasize an upstroke, which can be quite tricky. So this is a great way to get around that, and a great tie-in with another trad instrument. The tap down triplet, or the tap down jiglet, works quite well as a variation in a more traditional jig pattern. is I'm doing down, up, down, up. I'm doing 4 beats of the regular jig rhythm, down, up, down, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm doing 4 beats of the down, up, tap, down jig rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. So to put those together, 1, 2, 3, 4, down, up, tap, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, down, down, 3, 4. The tap down is also really useful when we get into this related tune type called the slip jig, which is a jig in 9/8. So instead of having 2 beats, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, you would have 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. You would have 3 beats of 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. And if we were to apply a regular jig rhythm to that, you would end up, between measures, you would end up with the emphasis on alternating between the downstroke and the upstroke. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But if we bring up the down up tap on the last beat, we can kind of get around that reversal. So the first 2 beats are traditional down, up, down, up, and then the third beat is down, up, tap, which allows us to go directly back into the pattern, starting on beat 1 on a downstroke. 1, 2, down, up, tap, 1, 2, down, up, tap, 1, 2, down, up, tap, 1, down, up, tap, 1, 2, 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 down, up, tap. So that is a slip jig. Slip jigs are wonderful. One of my favorites is Kid on the Mountain, which is a great multi-part. I think there are 5 parts. The Stray Away Child is another great one. The Chieftains do a lovely version of that. Another tune type is the hornpipe. And the hornpipe actually draws very strongly from the jig rhythm. Because it's syncopated, you can basically play it as a jig with a lot of those like silent upstrokes. Because the hornpipe is often quite swung, or it has that kind of lilt to it, you can play it like this. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Or you can play it as if it were a jig with a silent upstroke. Down, down, up, down. And that can be really handy because oftentimes hornpipes will have these like triplety moments, da 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 da, like on beat 4 or something like that. You'll have this common pattern. So to already be playing that silently, it can be really easy to sort of just flow right into that. Down, up, down, up, down, 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 boom. To break that down a little bit further, the first beat, down, up, down. The second beat, up, with a silent downstroke. Up, down, up. Try that again. Up, down, up. So between the first beat and the second beat, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down. So 2 downs, 2 ups. And I like to do down, down, up, down, down, up, to do a little bit of a triplety feel, jiglet at the end there. So the core of it is the, and then depending on the melody, you can throw in, the filled out jig pattern, filling in and playing that silent note. A march is basically just you can play it as a slow reel. The Star of the County Down is a great example of that. So playing it as a slow reel, sort of emphasizing these silent notes. Ba-da-boom, bum, ba, ba-da-ba, ba. Even in slower tunes, if I play several downstrokes in a row, I'll often just start bouncing them off the head. So instead of playing down, up, down, 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 and really playing those silent upstrokes, often it can be much more efficient to just play the downstrokes as tap, tap, tap. So for like the Star of the County Down, I would do 3 taps and then a down up. Tap, 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 down, up, tap. A lot of the instrumental music is a great place to be very melodic and kind of to match the melody. But when you have these songs, the melody is often a little bit simpler, and so it can be good to play a rhythm that doesn't obscure that kind of creates this nice drone below the melody. Another tune type that's really useful to know is the polka, and the polka is one of those tunes that they all have these like consistent elements, but they're also very unique, and so one pattern doesn't always work for all the patterns, but knowing what elements to use can allow you to very quickly figure it out, especially if you're playing a new tune. For polkas, they're often faster than a reel. You don't have to play as fast, or you can play faster. It's often up to you. But what they're built on is this slightly easier. You'll also have these double time moments in the melody. Da 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 da. So you have these like, but on top of that, you have these. So you have this like 4 16th notes and then a bunch of 8th notes, 4 16th notes and then a bunch of 8th notes. And that 16th note grouping will often, depending on the tune, it will often change places from tune to tune. Within a single tune, it remains quite consistent, but between tunes, it will change places. So sort of knowing that there's this 8th note bass line, and then there's going to be a 16th note group somewhere in there. Just be aware of that. You can also suggest the 16th notes and not necessarily play it. So to do that, you would play the first note of that group as a downstroke, and then the last note of that group as an upstroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's this kind of extreme lilt, this very stretched lilt. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. to alternate between that and the baseline eighth notes. So we have one example. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, da 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 ba da ba da 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 da. Yeah, so at first we play the 16th note groups. The second beat we suggest the 16th note groups, just playing the first and the last note, and then we go into that 1, 2, 1, 2, eighth note bass line. Let's try that one more time. So that is the polka. One other variation on the polka, let's just try moving that 16th note group into different places. So right now we've been playing the 16th note group as the first beat. Let's try playing it as the second beat. So we'll play 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. And because polkas are so fast, it can often be really useful to alternate tones every beat. So like the first beat will be open, the second beat will be closed and a little bit higher pitched, the third beat will be open, the fourth beat will be closed and higher pitched. And again, when we have those 16th note groups, the fast bit, that can often be a good place to start high and then get a little bit lower as you're going and kind of descend down to the next note. Right there, what I'm doing is I'm starting on the side of my hand and then lifting that side off, but keeping the heel of my hand on. So throwing that back into the polka pattern. Awesome. I think a great place to finish up is with a 7/8 tune. And so this is based on Bulgarian and Balkan rhythms that were brought back by Irish musicians during the 60s and 70s. And this is really the perfect blend of the reel and the jig. These rhythms are often built through the addition of sections. So instead of thinking of something as being subdivided equally, what you're doing is you're adding these groupings of 2 or 3, reel or jig. You add a group of 2 as a little section of a reel, and you add a grouping of 3 as a little section of a jig. Beyond that, the notes themselves are equal. Every note is just a down, up. It's basically, just think of it as constant eighth notes, but the how many of them together is really what distinguishes the rhythm. So to start out, you use 2 2 little reels, down, up, 2 sections of reel. And then for the last bit, you have a little jiglet, a little jig grouping, down, up, tap, 1, 2, 3. So to put all those together, you have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, For tones, I like to start out low with the first 2. For the last group of 3, I like to raise the pitch a little bit and then descend. Down, up, tap, down, 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 up, tap, down, 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 up, tap, down, and for that descending pitch, what I do is I have the edge of my hand against the skin, and then I roll that off, leaving just the heel of my hand. Down, up, tap, down, up, tap. So I'm just rolling my hand from resting on the side to resting just on the heel. So by taking the side of my hand off, I'm raising the pitch. So let's just try that one more time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now the pitch. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, Awesome. So that's one of the most common 7/8 rhythms. With these kinds of additive rhythms, the pieces are modular, and so you can move them anywhere you want. You could move the 3 grouping in between the 2s at the beginning. You can add groups of 2 or 3 after it to any extent, 11/8, 17/8. Usually they're often these sort of odd numbers. But let's try moving around that group of 3. Let's start with the group of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Awesome. Now let's put it in the middle. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Let's try looping that together. Awesome. So those are 7/8. They're really versatile. There are so many different configurations. I hope you enjoyed that class. Thank you so much for joining me today.